One less day to wait this week on Miami fans. The Canes go to Raleigh, North Carolina on Friday night to take on the Wolfpack at 5-1 as a 10-point favorite according to Vegas. Talking Miami football tonight, we got Cam Underwood on the line from State of the U. So before you do anything, make a track on over there after watching us go live, stateoftheu.com. Check it out. Get set for the game. Know the personnel, both sides of the football, and know what you're watching tomorrow night on a Friday night with Miami. Cam, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. Just hanging out, sporting my good old Teacher of the Year jacket from my former life because it was a little Florida cold, like 75 with a breeze. So I grabbed, it was the first thing that was around as, it was here. But just, got that little action going on. But
Teacher of the Year jacket. You wouldn't want to stand up and display that for us, would you?
It's just a little...
I can't lose the graphic, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I can only replace it.
No, it's fine. It was just a little, a full zip thing. Miramar High School had a sponsorship with Under Armour. And so the administration, they got for, most of us, I think, so when we got the 1 year, I think that I won, they got for the most recent, like 4 or 5 or 6 of us, and everything. It was embroidered, has my name on it and everything. It's my size, it still fits and everything. It's just that little itty bitty bit of comfort as just a little like I said, Florida cool today and everything. So, just trying not to get sick or anything like that. So yeah, just threw it on and whatever. So and I earned it. So,
Connecticut hot for November. It was like low to mid 60s and sunny. So I went out and shot some baskets, and it's supposed to be pushing 70 through the weekend. So that's probably our last glimpse of that.
Mm-hmm.
There must be a heat wave going through the country. I just talked to a guy in Nebraska. He said it was 83. So there you go.
Okay.
All right, we're talking Miami football. So what the deal is, everybody, is that typically, even in the middle of May, Cam and I get together 2-3 minutes before we launch the show, and there's usually a couple commits or at least some rumors out there, and there's a coaching change or there's a coordinator who did this or said that. There's just a list of items. It being the middle of the season, of course we can talk North Carolina State. Of course we're going to talk the Canes' first 5 or 6 games and how they prepare going into this one. Check out all the videos I've posted. I had an NC State 247 sports guy come on. Great discussion concerning their football team, so check that out. But we basically have a clean slate. So you guys produce the show. I'm going to start with this one because in talking to a number of Miami fans this week, and sifting through the comments, there's a lot of angst about how the running backs are being utilized in this offense, concerning why don't we get them out in space catching passes? Why do we run up the middle so much? Why don't we see more of the 2 freshmen, Knighton and Chaney? Just a lot about does De'Ara King understand the zone read? He doesn't seem to be making the right decision all the time. A lot of that concerning the running game.
Yeah, it's easy to talk about, and I think it's something that we talked about last week. Cam Harris got benched last game before the bye, and then he tweeted about being disrespected and everything because of the lack of workload. So I think we saw that Miami went in a different direction at running back to start to give some of the youngsters, Jalen Knighton and Arnold Chaney Jr., a little bit more of more run out there, more snaps at the expense of the starter. And, again, this is the same thing that I talk about in recruiting. Everybody's like, okay, you want insert player here. And, he should have been a Hurricane. Okay, so who are you not going to go after? You know what I mean? Who are you not going to have in this class? In order to have that. And if you're going to have, you want to have the freshman kids, that means you're going to take Cam Harris off the field. And you saw that happened in the last game. So, there is that. I've questioned some of the calls or decisions that De'Ara King has made in the run game. To me, it seems like something that's from just the top down of being dictated to like what we're looking at in terms of giving or keeping in the zone read game. I think that went back to, even Malik Rozier a couple of years ago. It was just like, like you're keeping it. Sometimes you should give, and you give. Sometimes you should keep. And I think that that's a systematic thing, and I don't like it. And especially when you're going back a couple offensive coordinators ago, and everything like that. Because I'm talking about going back to Mark Richt and Dan Enos with the quarterback run game or lack thereof there. And if you're having similar kind of numbers, non-scramble quarterback runs are pretty much the same. You're not having put a lot of called quarterback runs or ones, it seems, where, he's keeping it when there's acres of space and everything. It can be a little frustrating because, you're seeing these 2 yards up the middle or no gain, or you get 8 yards on first down, and you run an inside zone, and instead of pulling it and keeping it and running for 20, you give it to the running back and you run into the line, and the line is being, beaten to the point of attack in the run game, and it's not going anywhere like that. It can be a little concerning, especially when you, again, if you want to be the best, you have to beat the best. And you look at what Clemson has done with Travis Etienne recently. Hey, we're not going to run up the middle against Miami. We're not going to do that against whoever. So what do? They sneak him out. And everybody's like, oh, we're going to be all inside against Clemson. Like, cool. Swing pass and then profit. You know what I mean? And you want to see a little bit more of that. Cam Harris does have a couple receiving touchdowns where, he's been up the middle, maybe on it looks like a broken play, like he's in a block on quarterback power, and then he slips up the middle for a touchdown. Jalen Knighton had that touchdown against Louisville in the same kind of a thing. He's had another couple of things. So there's been some of those things, but you want to see it a little bit more. And I think that the lack of production from what we're seeing from the run game is what is dictating or showcasing to many people that maybe something different with the running backs or the run game or whatever could work, because what we're seeing has not necessarily been as effective as we want it to be.
Clemson was able to adjust against Ohio State in the college football playoff on 2 different fronts, one being Trevor Lawrence and his receivers couldn't separate from Ohio State defensive backs, and they were not being able to throw the ball downfield. And then Trevor Lawrence suddenly becomes a runner, and everybody was shocked by this. Trevor Lawrence can run on a defense like this? Yeah, he did. They weren't expecting it. Secondly, Travis Etienne couldn't run the ball from a traditional running back position. They couldn't push Ohio State down the field. They couldn't get in the run. They started using him as a receiver, and he torched them in the fourth quarter. And we saw that against Boston College last week. He gained 29 yards rushing in the first half, caught 7 passes for $140 in the game, and caught the game-winning touchdown pass out of the backfield. So Clemson was able to go to plan B, C, D against either really good teams or against teams that were pushing them in the moment.
And that, again, that's just what we're talking about, of being able to have the malleability on offense to go to something else if what you initially desired to do was taken away. And again, the things that we're doing with De'Aaron King and the running backs, whether it's in the run game or in the short passing game or, things like that, the things that we're doing are not successful. So lots of us are looking for options that can be successful. And I talked about it from a schematic standpoint last week. Justin DeTavio writes a bunch of great X's and O stuff on our site. Roman Marcianti writes a bunch of great X's and O stuff on our site. Talking even with Daniel Gould, who's not an affiliated blogger or anything. He just kind of does his own thing. He looks at all the statistics, and then he'll look at some X's and O's, and he's come up with some different things. So I've given you 4 people, 3 from State of the U, and then another one who I know well and trust. And then, there's other people on top of that who are looking for answers because, again, they're answers that are needed because the performance of the engagements and interactions that we're doing with those people who run the ball, De'Aaron King, Cameron Harris, Donald Chaney Jr., and Jalen Knighton, And, the short screen game and things like that has not been that successful. And again, I said it last week, and I mean, I hate to do it, but I got to do it. I don't understand at the end of the game against Virginia why we're going to Robert Burns in the fourth quarter for snatch that count at running back when Donald Chaney Jr. is cooking. He's the hot hand at running back, and those 10 carries for 41 yards or 43 yards and a touchdown, those were very impactful at a time in the game that really mattered. And all of a sudden, then you want to go to whomever it was. I couldn't have cared less. It could have been Robert Burns. It could have been going back to Cameron Harris, who was clearly benched. I don't know why you go away from the guy who got you there and the stud freshman who could help you bring that home. I don't understand the choice to go away from that at that time. I don't care who it was. It could have been it could have been Jalen Knighton at that time. It could have been any other running back on this roster. I don't care. Why are you going away from this guy at that time? And it's things like that that are questionable. And so we're looking for answers because there seem to be problems that need solutions if you want Miami to continue to win games.
Austin Keene's got a recruiting question. We'll get to that in just a second because we've got like 3 other comments concerning the offense that flow with what we're talking about right now. Porp75, how much of the seemingly quote-unquote limited playbook can be attributed to a new offensive coordinator, transfer quarterback, COVID's disturbance to the offseason, especially 9 weeks in?
I would say little to none at this point because we've already seen that there's been zigs to the zag. You know what I mean? Louisville, that game, it seemed okay after running what we ran, which was basically, the up and A one run play against UAB. We need some wrinkles. We need some counters to what we did. We had them. We had plenty of them against Louisville. Them touchdowns, scheming people butt naked wide open. They still haven't covered Brevin Jordan up the seam. They still haven't located where Cameron Harris or Jalen Knighton were on those back-to-back 75-yard touchdown plays. So look, we needed a counter. We needed something to get off of what they were looking at, from what we had shown before. We had that. Florida State, we beat the hell out of them. They had no idea what we were doing on either side of the ball. And I love that. But we've already shown the ability to be multiple. We've already shown the ability. Look, even the last game against Virginia, you come out on those first 2 plays, zip, zap, zoom. Sorry, not even. You get zip, zoom because it wasn't even a zap in there because it was 2 plays on it, and then you cue up the band and change the scoreboard. We've already seen the ability to do these things. So to me, to say, oh, well, look, and I get that everybody's dealing with COVID and everything, but if you want to talk about that, 9 weeks, I mean, you're two bye weeks and 6 games behind you already. So this is going to be week 9 upcoming, and we've already seen things happen on the field that showcase the ability to change the paradigm, to change the plays, to change tendencies, and then exploit the defenses. Miss me with the rest of that then. And it would be one thing if we hadn't seen that ability already. We've seen it change. We've seen this offense and defense, but we're not talking about defense right now, but we've seen this offense change to the tendencies or change against the tendencies that they've shown, take advantage of what the defense is doing to combat those, and then go and score points. So I don't want to hear that we can't do it. I just need you to do it.
Yeah, once you've blown the top off the defense, man, that shows that you can do so much after that, because if they want to soften their coverage, then, hey, we'll take the little hitch routes all day for 8 to 12 yards. We can do that if you're going to play that soft, or we're just going to keep blowing the top off if you're going to be stubborn and try to play us man-to-man.
And the other thing about it is those stop routes turn into touchdowns. And that's something that I've been talking about for years. You remember that bowl game, the Russell Athletic Bowl, where I was there in Orlando and a bunch of us were, where West Virginia was playing off coverage all day because they couldn't run with us. And I was screaming it. I even tweeted it from the stadium when I had coverage. I said, just throw the now route. Just get the ball to a David Njoku or whomever. And they finally threw a stop route to Amon Richards. You know what happened? Touchdown. I think it was like 64 or 70 yards or something. They just said, look, fine, you want to play off here. We're giving it to this dude. This should have been a first-round draft pick. I'm so still hurt for him, man. But we're going to give it to him now.
I know you do.
We're going to give it to him now and then let him go. And I don't think that you can run with him because you're playing off. So even those things, if you think, hey, I can take that 8 or 12 yards with the athletes we have in Miami, them 8 or 12 yards can turn into 75 yards, a touchdown, cue up the band, and change the scoreboard. You know what I mean? So it's those little things can go a long way because we have this kind of athletes. We have this kind of talent on the roster. You know what I mean? And so you can take the top off. You can confuse them where, Louisville, they're still looking around to figure out where somebody went on a play. They did or what. There's so many things, and we've seen these glimpses of these kind of things. I know you're not going to hit a home run every play. You're not going to get that perfect look every play. You're not going to get any of those things every single time. And anybody thinking that you're going to get those every single time, relax. You're not playing NCAA on freshmen. It's not going to be there every single time that you align. However, what you do on offense, I think that there's the ability to be more productive and more consistently productive, especially given the occasional ability to take the top off, run past everybody, and blow, and score from distance, which Miami scored from distance quite a couple times this year and had these chunk plays. I think that maybe you can add in a little bit more of efficiency with the explosiveness, and that would help everybody on the offensive side of the ball.
You can take any sport, and there's a risk-reward factor that you have to weigh the abilities of your team against the abilities of the other team, the game situation, everything involved. When a runner's leading off first base, you have to weigh, okay, who's at the plate? How good is the pitcher? How good is the catcher to get the ball down to second base? Whether that runner should take off to put themselves in scoring position. Is it worth the risk of the out? That's probably a 20 or 25% possibility of happening. Same thing in basketball. Are we going to shoot threes? Well, it's a tougher shot. It's from distance, but it rewards us what is the math? 3/2, another half point per. So how good are we from distance versus what is the defense doing, on and on and on. And at some point in the NBA, they determined, okay, we need to shoot, most teams that are doing the analytics, we need to shoot X number of threes. Of course, they've got to be decent threes. And that's why you see these, we would have never seen years ago, teams come down on a break and be throwing it out to the 3-point line rather than taking it to the hole. So on and on and on. The same thing in football. It's 4th and 3. We're at the 50. Do we punt? Do we not punt? Well, the same deal. Well, we may get burned and we give up the ball at the 50, but if we on and on and on, there's risk reward to all of this. And in the passing game, if you're going to take your shots downfield, it's, well, yeah, we're taking our shot on 1st and 10, and there's probably a 30% chance we're going to hit this pass if we throw it 40 yards. But if we hit it, it's a huge play. Plus, we set ourselves up to do good things to show that we're going to take this shot versus it's going to be 2nd and 10 most likely. So we kind of wasted a play. If you just want to look at what we accomplished in the here and now, it's all risk reward in regards to measuring your skills and your abilities versus the opponent and the situation. Eric Smith. Cam, how do you feel about incorporating a little I formation? Are we talking traditional I formation? Anyway, to put tight ends in nice situations a la Shockey, Franks, Winslow Jr., I think running backs could benefit with some power running traps and counters.
I don't want to see any I formation at all. I'm completely against that. I've been wanting to see a spread offense for a decade or more. And now that we have one, I'm not here to talk about I formation. We don't have the personnel for it. We don't have the offensive line up front for it. I don't want to see any kind of I formation. I don't want to see any of that at all. Now, if you want to talk about different looks in the run game, I'm here for, why don't we try some outside zone from pistol? Why don't we see from pistol if we can run stretch or a counter or in something that we ran, again, with Donald Chaney Jr. eating up those yards. We started running power O. You know what I mean? You wrap that backside guard to the front side play, to the hole, and then you hand it to the running back, and then that ends up being a lead blocker kind of a situation. You down block the other guys, you wrap that backside guard, and it's called power O. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's I'm running it down your throat, football. whether it's from I formation, shotgun, pistol, whatever. If you're running power O, that's smash mouth football. And you found a way to do that from shotgun, from pistol in the last game. I would rather incorporate some of those downhill run concepts more than a line and I formation. Because the last thing I want to do with the talent that we have on this roster in space is putting more people in the box. You know what I mean? Because if you got 5 offensive linemen, right? Quarterback is 6, fullback is 7, running back is 8, tight end is 9. You know, and that's going to be in your tackle box area. No, we don't have that offensive line. We don't have that kind of team to run that. We're not. You want to run a Wisconsin kind of thing. You want to run a Coach Paul Johnson triple option, a service academy kind of thing. No, I don't want that. I don't want that. But there are plenty of, physical run concepts you can still run from a spread-ish kind of formation, whether any of the ones that I've listed or any other ones. And that's something I think that Roman talked about in one of his mailbags. Somebody asked about. I kind of nudged him to answer one of those questions like, hey, we should talk about the power in the run game, you know what I mean? Or something like that, on one of the posts on State of the U. So, I mean, yeah, you can do some physical run from the spread look, from the pistol look, from any of those kind of things. But I formation, I don't want to see it. No, thank you.
Some of the more fascinating matchups in college football were around 2009, right around the time Harbaugh turned around Stanford, Oregon, from about 2009, 2010 up until about 2014, when Oregon fell off. For about 5 years there, the contrasting styles of watching those two teams when they were two of the top 5 to 10 programs in the nation, to see Oregon when they were way ahead of the curve. Now, what they did, if we saw it now, it's like what everybody else does. So it's not that big a deal. But then it was lightning, it was tempo, it was speed, it was even offensive linemen with quickness getting out on the perimeter. Then you'd see Stanford get the ball and the linemen had splits like that. They were almost wrestling. And they would just plow ahead and they would just beat them up. And you'd see one year Oregon would get their kind of game going and they'd beat them like 51-27 because Stanford just couldn't keep up. But then the next year, Stanford pull off an upset like 26-20 because they would just pound them. And it was fascinating watching those two teams be the two best teams in the conference at completely opposite ends of the spectrum.
Especially when you look at, and again, up front, Stanford was just getting these huge dudes who, everybody talks about offensive linemen needing to be smart. And obviously you're going to Stanford, so you have those academic requirements and everything. So you're getting these very intelligent dudes who are also incredible athletes. A lot of them went to the NFL and everything like that. Massive human beings. And just put them all together. It's impressive, and when you have those kind of athletes at that kind of size and skill and dexterity, you can do those kind of things where we're going to play in a shoebox. We're going to run. Our whole game plan is based around inside run. That part of practice when, okay, you're going to have skill guys go over here. No. Inside run, buddy. So our offensive line versus defensive front 7, line and linebackers, and, running backs, tight ends, H-backs, hat on hat. You're going to hear the pads popping all the way across the practice field, no matter if it's high school, Optimist, college, pro. And we're going to sit here, and the offensive coaches are going to scream and yell, and the defensive coaches are going to scream and yell about hand placement and slants and finding a way to get to wherever. And we're just going to work the inside run game for the rest of practice. And that was the entire ethos of the Stanford program, because we can bully you on inside run. You remember Creed 2, the second movie with Michael B. Jordan, when he said, look, we're going to go down to Mexico. You're going to have that 1 foot in that ring, and you're going to be here and work the inside. So he cracked your ribs before, and you want to run away from that inside work right here? Nah, you ain't going nowhere. Stay right there and figure it out, because sometimes it's about heart, and you got to have the want to stick with it, because it's not easy. And it's physical, and it's demanding, and it's going to take all of that personal gumption and integrity and mental and testicular fortitude to stick in there because it's tough. It's hard. But when you have the guys to be able to do that, it can be so rewarding because I can be a little bit bigger than you, but mentally I'm so much tougher than you, and I'm not going to flinch an inch in here. And you might win the first one, you might win the second one, but there's going to be a third, fourth, fifth, 8th, 12th, 27th, 40th inside run. Do you have it in you to stay here and do that? And Stanford did, and they also had the offensive lineman of gigantic size and skill, Andrews Pete, who was an offensive tackle at Stanford, playing guard in the NFL at 6'7", 340. You know what I mean? Walker Little was a top 10 offensive line or top 10 player in his recruiting class. Could have gone anywhere in America, had offers from everywhere in America. He says, I want to have a Stanford education, so I'm going to go to Stanford. I'm going to sit behind guys, maybe play guard for a year. And he's 6'7", 325, and all of a sudden he's at 10. But he's one of the many at that size. So they could do that. And to Mark's point, yeah, you had the disparate paradigms of we're going to work in a shoebox and we're going to beat you in the shoebox versus Oregon that's going to spread you out a little bit more. And they have those players to do that. That's the Oregon spread is more our style and ethos. So if you have that complete, and again, when you have teams that run like that, like a Stanford, like a Wisconsin, if I say the names of those programs, you understand everything about that program from the top down, because that's not a footnote along the path of describing what they do that is central to their identity as a football entity, right? We don't have that. And so we're going to do things a little bit differently. So I get that if you're asking about I formation or getting a little tighter and running these power concepts, these physical concepts, we're going to just go man-to-man, downhill 34 dive. We're going to go power O. We're going to do some of those kind of things in the run game. Again, I think that you can integrate some of those concepts, and I think that Red actually obviously is showing a propensity to want to do that. And again, I'm mentioning things that we have done on the field, so I'm not just pulling things out of thin air. But we are different a little bit than some of those teams that are just a little bit bigger up front. And again, we're Miami. We're not going to be the biggest team up front, and that's okay. But then we need to leverage some of these other things, like we're talking about, to get our skilled players in space and also have this diversity in the run game where if we're running an inside zone read and giving it to the running back 25 times, if that's not working, then we have something else, a counter, another option, another kind of run scheme that we're going to run to or go to that can be successful to help, complement what we're doing elsewhere in the offense.
In junior high and high school, we called them hamburger drills, and everybody hated them. Well, most of us hated them because I played wide receiver and defensive back, but they put 2 tackling dummies down, which meant we had to run every play like in a 4-foot, like a 4-yard box. You couldn't run to the outside. You weren't allowed. So there was an offensive lineman, a defensive lineman, then somebody played running back, and they just kind of gave you the ball, and somebody played linebacker, and it was just a hamburger. Because it was just meat grinding together. Like there was nothing. You couldn't run. There was no speed option in it. So the wide receivers and defensive backs hated it because you basically had to play linebacker or you had to play running back and get mixed up in that mess and just pop pads. That's all it was people popping pads.
It's the cat and mouse drill, like where you have offensive lineman, defensive lineman, you have a running back and then a defender of some, caliber trying to stop that running back. But look, a lot of these touchdowns that we've seen, they start that way. They start on the inside run. Think about Travis Homer, 2017 against Virginia Tech, right? When he broke it. Where did he break that? Up the middle. And then he was gone. Think about DJ Dallas for a lot of those touchdowns. Again, he had a long one against Virginia Tech last year. Where did he break that? Up the middle. You know what I mean? And then things go, because once you get through the middle and then you're, to the second and third level. Yeah. So, we're seeing some of those things. But again, if I can name certain specific plays, we're not necessarily having the success on a consistent basis in that kind of thing. And I get that that's where people are asking those questions. But getting back to the original question, I formation, for me, the answer is no.
Hussein 47 Crip, thank you so much for the super chat contribution. Hi, Mark and Cam, your best commentators in the game. Thank you. Appreciate that. Of course. Now we'll get to the recruiting question here from Austin Canes. Patrick Payton committed to Nebraska in May of 20. 28th rated outside linebacker, 67th rated player, according to the 247 Sports Composite in Florida, top 450 player nationally from, of course, Northwestern.
Yeah, and the question is, do we go after Patrick Payton, outside backer who plays, some rush end at Miami Northwestern? Obviously, we have a bunch of guys committed from Miami Northwestern. We even had another defender, but then let him go elsewhere to kind of create a space in this class. And I will refer to what I said earlier. If we're going to go after Patrick Payton, who are you not taking in this class? Is it going to be one of the guys at linebacker, Deshaun Troutman or Tyler Johnson? Both of them being younger brothers of guys who have played superstar football at the high school level and at the college level and moving on into the NFL ranks. Trinell Troutman, who was at all over South Florida, but also finished at St. Thomas Aquinas before going to Louisville, is Deshaun Troutman's older brother. And then Jaquan Johnson was Tyler Johnson's older brother. And I mean, his resume as a football player from optimist all the way through is beyond reproach. So you're going to get rid of one of those guys and do a 1-for-1 swap at defensive on the defensive side and linebacker? Are you going to take away one of the defensive linemen? Are you going to go one of the a different position? Hold on one second. Are you going to yeah, so I mean, it just comes to a simple question of, if you want that player, who are you getting rid of? Because we only have about 2 spots left in this class, and with all due respect, I think that we have bigger fish to fry that we're chasing. You can maybe say that we're up to 3 spots in this class, because Savion Collins, I don't think is going to end up at Miami at this point unless something drastically different changes for him, and between him and Miami. And I finally finished that recruiting notebook, that class breakdown that I posted on Monday. So you can go and look at the narrative that I put for all of the players in our current recruiting class, a couple of the targets and things that are on the horizon. But I don't think so. I don't think that we're going to go after Patrick Payton, to be perfectly honest. And if we were, the simple point of conversation is, then who in this class are you not going to take in favor of taking him? And while thinking that he could be a good addition to this roster, he's somebody who in time could be a contributor at Miami, I don't see it with him to the point where we would take him. I don't think that he's going to be that dynamic of an edge rusher where we need to take him like a Gregory Rousseau or like a Jafari Harvey or a Jonathan Garvin, who was a 3-star. I don't see him having that same kind of ability. I don't necessarily see him being a game-changing linebacker. And I do like Troutman, especially because he's faster and can work in space. Tyler Johnson has played a similar role as edge rusher at Killian, and he's being more productive than Payton is right now at that same kind of a spot with similar size. I think Payton's an inch taller than Johnson, but I mean, that's Jaquan Johnson's little brother, and he has the game to play here. So, I mean, this comes down to a thing like with Amari Daniels, like with Keith Brown, both of them teammates of Miami Central who just committed to Texas A&M over the weekend or last week at the beginning of the week. There's just not room for everybody, and somebody I've never spoken to on Twitter hopped in my mentions. He was talking about, how do you feel about the high school talent in South Florida? And I was like, it's the best in America. Like, I feel great about it. What are you talking about? He's like, oh, well, there's guys who could play orange and green, but we're not bringing them in. Yeah, because there's 100-something, maybe more, Power 5 level recruits in South Florida every year. You're not going to have literally the whole hood on scholarship. You know what I mean? You're just not going to do that. You don't have the numbers to do that. At some point, you have to make choices and everything. And I think that Patrick Payton is one of those players who, again, noting that he could play here in time. He's a Power 5 player. He's committed to Nebraska. I think he can do better than Nebraska because Nebraska, I don't think is going to be good. I think he's going to leave out of there just like Henry Gray and Jaden Francois did. I don't think he's going to stick there because I think there are better options for him and better programs for South Florida talent, especially for Miami Northwestern. But noting that he is a Power 5 level caliber recruit, I just don't think that we ever know. And sometimes it'd be like that.
So it's nice when we move the show around and find some people that may watch us on a faithful basis and regular basis, but just can't just watch us live. So it's nice. Andrew says, first time on the live squad. Great show consistently, fellas. Do you feel like the lack of spring/fall camp for a brand new offensive system has led to the lack of play calling creativity?
I mean, it's kind of similar to the other question from before.
Yeah.
I think a little yes or no, but I also think that we've just made some choices that have led to a little bit of conservatism on offense. I think that the lack of desire to throw the ball on first down has really truncated the creativity, or inhibited it, because we've not been really able to run successfully on first down in the last few games, and then that puts you behind the sticks. So now you're looking at 2nd and 11, 2nd and 9, as opposed to 2nd and 3. If you, again, do a quick pass and get 6 or 7 yards. If you have a run play that's successful, then you're in a different position, and then that gives you a little bit more creativity. But if you are running the ball, again, the same inside zone read where you're giving it to the running back and he's running into the middle, but doesn't really have that room. I know that you want to try to crease one and just kind of burst through there, but it's not creasing. It's not going anywhere. Now you're on, 2nd and 12. How dynamically creative you're going to try to be, because then your goalposts move, right? So what is success on 2nd and 12? If you're looking at the metrics, success is what? 7, it's 50% of the yardage gained or yardage needed. So if I'm at 2nd and 12, a successful play is a 6-yard gain, and that still puts me at 3rd and medium at 3rd and 6, if that, or fewer, and I think that you're balancing that with not really being able just to do straight dropbacks, because when, for many, many moons, if you know that Miami is dropping back to pass, pinning your ears back and getting up the field, that's a lose-lose proposition for Miami's offensive line. So I think that there's been some of that as well, that have played into it. But, again, we've seen enough dynamism from this offense where I would just like to see a little bit more of it on a consistent basis. Again, marrying a little bit more efficiency with the explosion.
When you use the term spread formation, people typically think pass heavy. We're throwing the ball all over the place, and that's not necessarily the case. And Austin Caines brings that up by saying, do you think some fans just assumed that the Lashley offense was a pass heavy spread because of SMU, when he's really a run heavy Malzahn disciple?
Yeah, but the thing about, I think that is true. I think that people thought spread and thought we're just going to chuck it around the yard, Mike Leach style. But if you followed, and I mean, again, Justin DeTavio, he wrote some great piece talking about the different kinds of spread back in the summer, or back after we hired Rhett Lashley. He's a spread to run guy, always has been. And he came in talking about, look, we're going to run the ball. We're going to get our swag back. We're going to be physical. We're going to do these things. That's the foundation of a Rhett Lashley offense, period, point blank.com in the story. And even if you looked at SMU, you might have seen some of the highlights of Bouchel throwing to James Prochet, but go back and look at the numbers. It bears itself out that they ran the ball a lot. But, when you talk about those things, I think that that Alabama and O State would beat Miami pretty badly. I agree. Yes. I wish it were different, and hopefully we're building in a way to controvert what you said, but I agree with you. I'm a pragmatic person. You're not going to really get much crazy fan talk from me. Just, orange and green glasses on and excluding every other piece of evidence. You're usually not going to get that from me. And I'm not going to say differently. You're right. They would beat us down, and hopefully we're building in a way that would not be the case.
People think they can poke the bear.
Yeah, they do.
With many people, you can right. Get them riled up, and
I mean, look, and sometimes I can get riled up and things like that. I'm not going to say that I don't ever have emotion, but yeah, come on.
I'm going to put a condition on your statement, though. I think that you'll agree with. If Miami played Alabama this week, if they played Ohio State this week, we could pick all sorts of scores off the board, because if it's an A game for Ohio State and it's a C game for Miami, it could get ugly. If it's an A game for both of them, Ohio State's better. They should win somewhat comfortably. We saw Clemson, Miami. But it's not out of the realm of possibility that if those two teams step on the field tomorrow, that Miami wins the game. South Carolina was a 4-8 football team last year. They beat Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Purdue and Iowa beat Ohio State in consecutive years in which Ohio State was a top 5 team in the country, and those teams weren't near. And Ohio State in every other game of the season proved that they were a top 5 team, but they got their doors blown off by Iowa and Purdue. So yes, UTEP is never going to beat Alabama.
Right.
They could play every day for the next 14 years in a row. It's not going to happen. But there is a collection of talent out there that, yes, there are layers and tiers, but on a given day or twice out of 10 times or whatever, the underdog, even a substantial underdog, has the ability to win that game.
Right, and Miami just has to play it to the level of that talent. You know what I mean? And that's something that we haven't seen, especially in big games recently. But yeah, so the other question about the run game, getting back to that. Yeah, I think that people saw spread and hear us talking about getting playmakers in space and think that that's going to be Mike Leach throwing the ball air raid. But there's a heavy run component to a Red Lashley offense. Everybody's talked about that. Everybody should know that. If you didn't know that, then going over to stateoftheu.com, we talked a lot about that. Marsh Thomas talked about it. Justin Tavio, Roman Kane, Roman Marcianti, all talked about it and everything. So yeah, there is going to be that. But again, we just need the running game to be a little bit more successful. In terms of the question about wide receivers, do I fault Rob Likens or the wide receivers themselves? I mean, it has to be a little bit of both. You know what I mean? But having been a teacher, you can give the greatest lessons. You can know all the stuff. You can say all the stuff. And if they're not doing it or they're not hearing you or you're not connecting so that's not being heard and done, then, it's a little bit on you because you're not making that connection, but it's a little bit on them because hey, we're watching this film and we bring in somebody else and says, okay, well, look at this or how about that? Da, 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 da. And any time that I brought in an outside person to work with my choir, I would always just stand in the corner like, okay, they're gonna tell you the things that I've been telling you. Sopranos, we were talking about this breathing. Basses, we're talking about this style. And they're gonna come in and they're gonna hear it and they're gonna see it because that's what we do. And the same thing if you're looking at the the wide receivers. Okay, well, what are you doing on this technique for this break? What if you're doing da 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 da? And they're gonna be like, and Likens can tell you, look, bro, I told you this. And again, we brought Rob Likens in. Why? Because he has previous experience as offensive coordinator, 1. And 2, he has coached 2 first-round draft picks in the last 2 years from Arizona State, N'Keal Harry and Brandon Ayuk. So he has developed guys to the level that we want our wide receivers and everybody to be. So clearly the proof's in the pudding there. It's not going to change overnight. And you have to have that desire, that buy-in. And it's going to be tough because, he's a first-year coach and everything. And he's going to be like, look, man, I like Dugans. I like, Stubblefield. Like, I'm not going to listen to this guy. I'm going to do it how I want to do it. And da-da-da-da-da. And that's fine. And you can miss that, that development. But it has to be on both coach and players. Hopefully you see further development because, again, if you have guys who have listened to Rob Likens in the past, they've been first-round draft picks. Like, that's a verifiable fact. Go look it up. I did not make that up at all. That is a verifiable fact. So at some point, hey, I've coached other guys and they've gotten there. If you don't want to listen to me, you don't have to listen to me. And we're going to find somebody else who's going to do it. So yeah, it's a little bit on him. It's in his first year. Hopefully we'll see future development, but it's also on the players because, just like Mark Harley said, if they're not doing what needs to be done to be great, can you really fault the coach?
Yeah, there's a combination, and we would have to be there in person and observing the sessions and then determining what's done with that knowledge that is communicated to really know.
Yeah.
Mr. Rubicon. So I first want to mention to Simon and some other ones, again, I appreciate that it's nice to see a number of people here in the live chat that say, hey, I watch you guys all the time, but it so happens that I can watch you live for the first time. So it's great to know that you support us, even if those views come later. and you can't communicate directly with us. So thank you so much for that, Mr.
Mhm.
Rubicon. So can we get Hood, Lewis? I'm assuming that's the kid that committed to Tennessee, and Chase Smith. I want dynamic linebackers.
Again, what are you doing to get Terrence Lewis and Jaden Hood from Miami Central and St. Thomas Aquinas, respectively, who are committed to Tennessee and Michigan, respectively, in that order for Lewis and Hood? I did say it backwards from the way that you listed it, but whatever. Are they taking the last two spots? Are you telling Tyler Johnson and or Deshaun Trotman to kick rocks and find shelter elsewhere? Are you going to say, we're getting rid of Savion Collins, so we're letting him go, and that's one spot, and then one of the empty spots in the side? Like, it is mathematically possible. Thank you, Logan. I appreciate that. He always finds reactions that I give on the show and gives them and everything like that, which is funny to me and everything. But mathematically in this class, you could get those guys, all three, Hood and Lewis, to go along with Chase Smith at striker at the second level, the linebacker, whatever, linebacker, second level of defense. I just don't necessarily think that that's the best usage of the scholarships for a variety of reasons, But I mean, it's like, that's tough because I think that everybody who is committed here can play here. There is the chance that Hood and Lewis will be upgrades. Are you sure that you're going to hit? There's a lot of moving parts. But if you ended up with a linebacker class of Hood, Lewis, and Chase Smith, I would not be mad at that, and sometimes if you're going to go after that, you're coming to the point of saying, to make an omelet, you got to crack some eggs. And, hey, Deshaun, hey, Tyler, we need to talk. Is tough to swallow. But if you want to be great, sometimes you have to divorce yourself from feelings. So I'm not saying that I would do it, especially because I'm not sure that you can actually get Hood and Lewis. Regardless of the chatter of Terrence Lewis, I don't think he's coming here. And so I don't necessarily want to cut off our nose and spite our face. You know what I mean? I don't want to lose what we have in the hopes of what we could get and then not get that and then not have what we have now. You know what I mean? So that's a tricky road to hoe. However, I will say, if Miami's linebacker second level on defense class ended up being Hood, Lewis, and Smith, I would enjoy that greatly.
So Mason Smith, AA there.
Woo!
One of the top players in the country, top 20, regardless of position, third-rated defensive tackle, number one player in the state. LSU's down. They're playing like garbage every week. Are the chances, have they improved to get Mason Smith?
I'll put it like this. If there's 20 players that are better than Mason Smith in this recruiting class, I want to see all 20. Because that kid is big. He is physical. And I think that even as high as he is rated, I think that he's underrated.
Wow.
Big facts. No, he's that kind of good. He's a top 10, top 5 kind of player in America good. And that's really no hyperbole, honestly and truly. I think that he is. I mean, the combination of size and speed and skill. I mean, like, he put up a thing of him working at a defensive lineman camp during COVID. And, man, he's a big teddy bear with nimble feet, man. He hit this spin move in the middle of that video. I mean, I'm sitting here or, at the old house, not this new apartment, but I was over at the old house. And, woo! I mean, it was – no, he's different. Number one player in the state of Louisiana from I forget the name of the town. But he –
Houma,
yeah.
Houma.
Yeah, Houma, Alabama, or Louisiana. He's so good. And Miami's been recruiting him. Mason Smith has openly talked about his favorite defensive scheme of the teams that are recruiting him is Miami's, because it allows for a little bit of freedom for the defensive tackles and just you go out there and be a play, make a play, be a playmaker, just dynamic at the point of attack in a way that the other teams that are recruiting him don't allow. It's more scheme-based there, whereas you give it's more player based here, if that makes sense. And he's talked about it. He said, this is my favorite defensive scheme. I love Miami's scheme. They get after it, what they do, especially up front. Well, he said that. And I would love to have him here. I mean, that's another guy, a 5-star All-American recruit, who he can show up on the first day of fall camp. You're walking over to the registrar's office and you're figuring out how he gets a scholarship. If I had to take a half scholarship from you and half scholarship from this other dude, which literally happened with somebody in the class of 2000 and the recruiting class of 2001 at Miami, because my buddy Matt Carter, number 11 in your program, who took over the 11 jersey for Ken Dorsey, who held for field goals and extra points, he had a half academic, half athletic scholarship. And I remember talking to Matt because he missed our education class one day because he had to go down to the athletic office and they had to switch. And they said, no, we need that half right now for somebody. I don't care what you got to do. You get Mason Smith, you work it out. I will figure the numbers out. If somebody got a gray shirt, I don't care. I am not going to sit here and pretend like even in a down year, LSU doesn't have a unique connection and pull to all the players in the state of Louisiana. It's a different kind of connection. It always has been ever since integration, and because everybody went to Southern or Grambling for the longest time. And then, when the SEC decided to integrate and say, black guys can play at the top level of FBS, then it changed everything, but especially in Louisiana, which is its own unique place. So I say that to say that, to me, it has to be LSU 1, probably Alabama, Georgia tied at 2, and then everybody else, including Miami. And there might even be some gaps between the levels of that strata. But I'm not going to sit here and really just say off the top that Miami is going to go and beat all these guys for this kind of a dude. And now, could he go somewhere else? Yeah, Devontae Smith from Amite, Louisiana, went to Alabama. Okay, that's an option. You know what I mean? There's other guys who've gone other places and things like that. But, I mean, I think that maybe Miami has a puncher's chance. I think that Todd Stroud is doing a great job in recruiting Mason Smith because it's been connected with him this whole entire way. And to hear the way that Mason Smith has talked about Miami in these recruiting interviews and things like that. And I love a lot of these interviews now, and I love what a lot of these writers and journalists and bloggers are doing, where they're not, even if they're team site affiliated, they're not leading. Saying, hey, Mark, tell me about your recruitment. Who's recruiting you? Who are you closely connected to? And leave it open and let the kid walk you to the coverage. And saying, hey, I'm Cam Underwood from State of the Union, where I come to Miami Hurricanes. So, Mark, tell me about Miami. You have a helmet behind you, and da-da-da-da. You're already pigeonholing. But I love what people are doing and saying, hey, tell me about your recruitment. Open-ended. And you hear when they mention these schools, but what are the schools that are on their brain? Unless you're really playing a long con like Jaden Hazelwood, where you're intentionally not mentioning somebody. You know what I mean? And so Mason Smith has mentioned Miami. So I think that there is a chance. I cannot say right now that it's a great chance just because top players from Louisiana go to LSU. And I hope that Miami can continue to win and maybe turn the tide in that kind of a recruitment. But I don't even know if he's going to sign at the early signing period or not. But Mason Smith is a guy that we are and should be recruiting all the way until the end, especially if you're considering the fact that Savion Collins is probably going to seek shelter elsewhere because we're going to part ways.
Simon, I appreciate so much that you've let us know that you never get to watch live, and you got a question here. We would get to it normally, but we got 2 super chats coming in, and time is running short. Everything Diesel, we appreciate.
Let me do it before we do the super chats. I got a couple minutes. All right. So, do you think it's time to start the youth movement, starting with this game tomorrow, with the bye week in the rear view? Wouldn't it be best to move the young guys in now? If you've not moved them up to the top line of the roster, of the depth chart over this bye week, then the answer is no. I think that hopefully we're seeing some of these younger guys get more snaps as we're going forward. Miami's not in a place where a full-scale youth movement is required. We're 5-1. The only team that beat us is the number 1 team in America, and we still have tons of our goals in front of us. They are potentially there to win out and go to the ACC championship game where we can see Clemson again. You get to a New Year's Six bowl game or a college football playoff, if you find a way to beat them for the first time in forever. Like, there's things in front of us where throwing the baby out with the bathwater is not necessary with the older guys on the roster. You know what I mean? Now, if we were, 5-1 in 6 games. If we're 2-4 heading into tomorrow night, oh yeah, put all the young guys in. Look, this season is lost already. We're going to build for the future. I think that we can pepper in some of those young guys. Somebody asked me, should we start Don Chaney over Cam Harris at running back tomorrow? I think that Chaney earned it for tomorrow. I'm not saying that Cam Harris shouldn't see any snaps, but based upon the last game, now I have not seen practice over the last 2 weeks, but based upon the last game, there's a case to be made that Donald Chaney Jr. should start tomorrow. But a full-scale youth movement, to me, means at the expense of winning, we're going to put these young guys out there to hopefully develop them so that next year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, this program is better. That's what Florida State is doing now because Florida State is terrible. And so they're saying, look, we did win a game. We won a couple games. They beat North Carolina randomly. They're 2-4 right now. And saying, look, at the expense of this season's success, we would like to develop these young guys and develop them by giving them reps in games. That kind of situation with their roster and their record and their schedule, that's where they are. Miami's 5-1, and the only loss is to the number 1 team in America. So can we give some of these young guys some snaps? Yes. Should we go full youth movement and whatever happens win-loss wise happens because we're going to get these young guys experience? Bro, I don't know what you're looking at, but the Solid Verbal podcast, shout out to Dan and Ty, they always say one thing: win your clunkers. So you're not always going to be at peak optimization. You're going to have to win some of those tough games that look ugly. Miami has found a way to do those things, and Manny Diaz says it in the locker room after every game. Winning a game is tough, period. It is. Look at North Carolina State, at Florida State. Look at all these other teams that have lost these games. Otherwise, that, would think, okay, well, on paper or in terms of talent or pedigree of the roster or whatever, they should not lose. They found ways to lose those. And you can say whatever you want about, like Mark said last week, why are we making blowouts into tough games? Why are we making 4-quarter games when we should be stomping on people all the way through? There's something to be said for that. But at the end of the day, Miami found ways to win these games. So full youth movement, I don't think so. I think you can find ways and spots to give the young guys some experience, but we're still 5-1 and have a lot of season in front of us where we can achieve these things that we set out to achieve at the beginning of the year. So we got to press forward.
Young Kids Midwest. Yes, I do an Ohio State show. It's on Wednesday at 2:00 Eastern time, so check it out. Chuck C, Mark and Cam. It's a great show, Cam. It's a great show. You should check it out. You would enjoy it. We could even have you on. Maybe there'll be a playoff game in the future.
No, thank you.
Maybe there'll be a playoff game in the future. We could mix it up.
I hate them. There's one person who, we've become friendly over years. So I will say there are 1, 2, 3 people in the world who are associated with and or root for that team that I tolerate. You being one. Diana, shout out to Diana on the timeline, is 2, and a good friend of mine of years. Her name is Katie Carey, a former camper of mine who's just a wonderful person. She's a expressive, modern dancer who I met when I worked at Interlochen Arts Camp. That's the terminal list of people who are associated with and or root for that team that I tolerate. So that's what I say.
I am brought onto a Michigan podcast once a week on Tuesdays, and he introduces me as the only reasonable Ohio State fan that he knows.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say that I know 2 others. Well, actually, no, because Diana's not reasonable. So I know 1 other. But yeah, that sounds about right.
Chuck C, thank you so much for the Super Chat contribution. We appreciate it so much. Mark and Cam, thanks for getting things ready for the weekend. All of my neighbors are BYU fans. Oh, yeah, this is Chuck C out in Utah, the Canes fan in Utah. Interesting that both they and Miami play, Friday night. Yes, BYU's got a big game against Boise State.
Yeah, man. So if you're out there, that'll be interesting. I mean, they got a big one. Yeah, that's a real big game for them.
That is leadership in that group of 5 hunt for a possible playoff bid that I don't think is coming, but it's elusive. Bergie, thank you so much for the contribution as well. Appreciate your knowledge, Cam. Great show, Mark. Do you think Manny has grown as a head coach, or is everything a product of what Lashley has brought?
I think that Manny has grown as a head coach, and I think that part of that growth is bringing in Rhett Lashley as offensive coordinator. I'm not going to put all of it on Rhett Lashley because we've seen some things where, maybe we could have increased or improved performance from him in the offense on that side of the ball. And I'm not going to take it away from Manny either because, he saw that moves needed to be made. He saw that things needed to be a little bit different, and he made moves to make that different. And if you just look at some of the in-game management things, he's done better according timeouts, and things like that, working the referees and everything and whatnot. So, I mean, there has been growth for Manny Diaz. And I think that part of that path is bringing in Rhett Lashley, but I'm not going to diminish the work that Manny has done and put it all on Rhett, completely and totally. I think there has been a marriage there, and I think that having guys on the staff who have been head coaches, have been coordinators, I think that has helped Manny Diaz grow and develop as well.
Cheryl is moderating this conversation. Kudos to Cheryl. There's your fourth Ohio State fan. If you would ever talk to Cheryl, she could possibly make the list. I don't know. But she at least moderates the live streams and does a fantastic job. So thank you so much, Cheryl, for reminding everyone to give us a thumbs up. We thank you so much for the contributions out of Chuck and others that I can't remember now. I usually write them down so I can recognize everybody at the end. My apologies there, but we certainly posted those to the screen and we appreciate those. Miami Hurricanes live, big game against NC State to try to move to 6-1. I'm going to be here live right after the game, so please check us out here. And of course, for all your Miami football coverage, stateoftheu.com.
Yeah, we're there all the time. Just have a great group of contributors over there. So please come on over and check it out. I'm actually going back through and rereading the recruiting rules right now. It's in this tab on my computer just because, I reference it. But I'm like, what were the actual words that I wrote and the points that I made? And I've, it's been a good read for me. So, I mean, that's up there because that's always evergreen. We have some great content every single week. So Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, we're at The State of the U. My personal account is at Underwood Sports. And I do try to engage with people if you come on over there. And I talk about video games and reality TV as well. So if you think it's going to be only sports over there, sorry. And then we're always on the website at stateoftheu.com. So come on over and fan with us.
Thanks, Cam. See you next week. Enjoy the game.
Will do.